Let's start with Bex.
Yes.
So, as a global tour company, what was things like pre-COVID, and then when COVID hit, what was, how did you cope with that?
Well, it was a little bit challenging when COVID hit, really early in March. We had about 3,000 travelers all around the world. We have trips in over 120 countries, and we have multiple trips running at any one time with local leaders. And just a little bit of insight into Intrepid, if anyone doesn't know, we run small group tours, so we're talking on average 10 travelers on a particular trip. They're led by locals. They're all about authentic, culturally immersive experiences, and the aim is really that you get to grips with the culture. And so they're really an amazing, authentic way of seeing a particular destination. So our first priority was getting people out of those destinations when it was, really clear that we were going to have to suspend our operations globally. And it was the first time that we've done that in our 30-year history. So everyone's safety was obviously the most important thing, first of all. And then it really became clear as time went on that international travel was not going to come back quickly. And, we saw a lot of people pivoting to virtual, which is something that I think has worked really effectively for a lot of people. We weren't sure that that was really, really the route that we wanted to go down. So essentially what we did was work with our teams to create products that were closer to our kind of key customers' homes. So although we have travelers from all around the world, a large bulk of them live in Australia, New Zealand, the UK, and North America. So essentially, we really expedited that product development process, and we worked on creating a model that primarily has been about Intrepid retreats. So very much more focused on slow travel and unpacking once, as opposed to our usual trips, where you'd stay in a destination for maybe 2-3 days before moving on. So we've had a lot of time and a lot of effort kind of gone into creating more local products. A lot of them have been more outdoorsy, centered on hiking, centered on cycling, because of course nature is where a lot of people feel safer right now. So that's really been one of the primary ways that we've reacted to the pandemic. And I'd say the only other way to just quickly brush upon is really ensuring behind the scenes and from an industry perspective that we're doing all we can to ensure that when the travel industry does rebound, it does so with sustainability front of mind, with ethics front of mind, and that it really is that kind of pause that mandates a new chapter, where I'm sure, we'll talk a lot more about this, but we essentially worked to open source our decarbonisation guide, our animal welfare toolkit, and various other kind of policies that we enact internally to ensure that we, are really putting sustainability and inclusivity first. We've tried to really share them with other industry partners and travel companies, and are continuing to do so, so that when international travel does return, we have more than just a product, we have a real purpose as well. So that's all from me for now, because I'm sure we will have many things to say beyond that, and I will let Stephen say his piece.
Yeah. Stephen, so, you run a walking tour company based in cities, and with a lot more focus around, Europe and the States. And so Europe being like one of the earliest and hardest hit, especially Italy, which is one of your biggest markets. What happened when COVID hit, and how did you react to that situation?
Well, yeah, right away, Italy was kind of the bellwether. We saw that things were growing there, and we knew it was going to affect everywhere. So, the Italian tours that were running actually in Milan at the time when things started to really kick off, Milan was really great about doing an early shutdown of the city and the attractions. So things really suspended activity in cities, I'd say faster And that was kind of giving us some time as well to prepare for the impact of other markets. But you know, we were running a very different type of business than Intrepid. Obviously, our main customer base is Americans, so for Americans to be able to go to Europe, you know, that was obviously something that very early on was clear was not going to be possible for quite some time. And so, you know, our biggest concern was how can we, you know, handle the customers who had pre-booked a lot of these tours, which I'm sure was similar with Intrepid as well. What can we do to try to support our team or our guides in a continual way? Because, you know, these people were going to be ostensibly out of work for an unknown amount of time at the beginning. And then it kind of continually you know, expanded from there, become much more of a global problem. And so, you know, going to virtual, to Beck's point, was clear to us that that was something that we could try to do quickly. And we launched that program within less than 30 days after the big shutdowns in Italy began.
And just a little background, because Erica reminded me I meant of explaining it for a little bit. Take Walks runs walking tours around destinations in Europe as well as the United States. They do historical tours, food tours, cooking classes, really, I think their specialty is really like getting you behind the scenes access to destinations and attractions like you can really normally get, like private stuff in the Vatican and the Louvre, etc. I've done many of their tours. I like them a lot. Not just because Steve and I used to be roommates. But yeah, we used to live together back in New York.
Cute.
And then Intrepid Tours runs multi-day group tours to destinations around the world, you know, focusing more on cultural and environmental experiences and like big buses that, you know, take you everywhere. Small group tours. So that's a little background intro, which I should have done before in the first question, but hey, it's all a work in progress. So, you know, we all know, like, we're still living in COVID times, and, you know, what I really want to say, like, now that we're like 6 months into COVID, I want to know what you guys are doing to adapt to this environment as borders shut down. I mean, you know, as a travel writer, you know, I mean, can't go anywhere. You know, there's, you know, especially as an American, there's only a handful of countries really open to Americans right now. Australians can't even leave their country. Kiwis can't really leave their country. You know, there's not a lot of cross-border travel going on. And so how have you adapted to this? And the follow-up to that is, when borders do open, do you still think you'll do whatever it is you're doing now in conjunction with going back to normal operations? And I'll start with Stephen, since I started with Bex the last time.
So you starting with Stephen. So we did a lot of different things to adapt. I'll kind of quickly show a video here I had promised to show at the beginning, but this is a little promotion that we did for the virtual tours that we set up. So let's see if we can do this properly here. Click this, click that. All right. And hopefully you guys can see my white screen.
Yeah.
All right. Oh, no, hold on. One more time. Gotta get the audio right. Yeah, I did it again. There's that button there. And it's still playing in the...
Okay.
And welcome to Florence.
Hi, this is Francesca from Rome. I can't wait for you to join us.
Ciao!
Buongiorno.
My name is Roberto.
My name is Denise.
Welcome to Rome.
Hi, my name's Emily, and welcome to London.
Hi, I'm Emma. Welcome to the Colosseum.
My name is Daniel, and welcome to the Louvre.
And you know, with this tours from home, it's a very interesting project that we're doing, and it is allowing us guys to be able to still keep on sharing with our clients our passion and love for our job and for the places that we love so much.
All right, that worked. Yeah, so that's just a quick kind of promotion about some of the things we were doing for.
Right. As I mentioned, we can you guys still hear me? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah, I was trying to switch the audio back on. So, you know, we have guides all around the world, as you mentioned, running all kinds of different tours. And while we were kind of stuck not being able to travel, and all of them, many of them were under lockdown in their homes altogether, right, in Italy and Spain. And so developing this product line of virtual tours that you could take. We were running different tours every day where people could connect around the world. You could book them right on our website. And we still are running this program today. We've had almost 7,000 bookings on the virtual tours. So it's a hugely growing program. And so that was our initial launch. We've done all kinds of integrations with that. So not just our traditional tours. These are 1 hour to 90-minute experiences, you know, ranging from $10 to $15. And really it was just a way to give the guides more work during this time when they were all stuck at home. And so we developed that program initially and really did a lot of fun things with it. We had special guests come on. We had, you know, notable figures, you know, everything from a writer, a historian who covers the Titanic, to a paleontologist in London, an archaeologist in Rome. So we had sort of notable figures leading virtual tours as well as our guides to kind of promote it. And one of our early, really exciting projects we did was actually had a local from Wuhan, China, was, you know, obviously was really in the news, but we wanted to paint it in a different light and a more fair light that was giving it credit for being a great city, not just, you know, a place that was taking a lot of heat for the pandemic. And so that was really interesting, hugely attended, and you know, helped to shine a spotlight on our program. So outside of that, we've done a lot of different things to adapt. Obviously, virtual tours is not really enough to sustain a tour business like Walks or Intrepid, but definitely is a way to provide some additional support to the guide. So we've done other things like private tours and multilingual tours, which I can talk about later, but many different adaptations, kind of like what Bex was saying, to try to make it more feasible for things on the ground to actually run when they open again.
Have you seen a greater acceptance of this concept of virtual tours? You know, I think one of the things that the pandemic has really changed is people getting used to virtual events like the Nomadic Network, as well as virtual learning. And so the idea, like, before you take a virtual home walking tour would be kind of weird back, you know, pre-COVID, and definitely even in the beginning days. But have you seen a greater acceptance of people being like, well, I can't get to Italy or Rome or whatever, and so I'm just going to take this sort of online class, you know, for an hour?
For us, you know, for us, it's been something that I think grew really by word of mouth. I will say the, you know, adoption of it was huge in April and May and early June, when people were still under lockdowns and quarantines, and then the summer wasn't here. And then when our customers' summer started to come, that kind of, you know, dwindled a little bit in interest, and now we're seeing it pick back up again. Certainly now it's definitely something people are more comfortable with. And what we're seeing now is a lot more kind of private and corporate interest in this stuff. For you know, as you can imagine, just like people at home, you know, there's people working from home who need to also have corporate events, or you know, virtual retreats. And so I think that's been kind of the next big swell of interest in these types of experiences. So we're doing a lot of that nowadays.
Now, back to with Intrepid, obviously, you know, your tours are multi-day, you know, 10 days, you know, through Madagascar or Morocco or whatever. So it's hard to have an hour virtual session the way Walks does. How has Intrepid adapted to this new environment?
Yeah, I think a lot of what Stephen said rung really true, with people's demands kind of changing over time and people's ability to want different things. And I think something that he spoke to well was the increasing demands that we're beginning to see now more for kind of private tours. So I think what I mean by that is really like customizing and tailor making your own trip, so something that is not off the shelf, but doing it for your loved ones, your bubble essentially. So prior, of course, like Intrepid really prides itself on, bringing together like-minded travelers, and inherent in that is that those like-minded travelers are really strangers from all over the world. And I think it's fair to say, 6 months into the pandemic, that the appeal of that is certainly not what it was prior to the pandemic. And so what we're really beginning to see and focus on in a way that I think makes a lot of sense to the consumer's needs right now is how we can really work where prior we had a 10-day trip in Morocco. How can we offer that exact same trip or a customized version of that trip, but not for a group of 10 like-minded strangers, for a group of 6 people in a family, 2 aunts and 2 cousins or something like that. So we're really beginning to focus more on our kind of custom trip making abilities, which is something that actually, to be honest, I think there's been an increasing demand for a while, and it's really, really going to be catalyzed now. And it's something that is very easy for us to do, and I think makes so much sense for us to be kind of talking about a little bit more clearly, because we have over 25 offices all around the world. So it means that the trip logistics are really being sorted kind of on the ground, as opposed to somewhere incredibly, far away on the other side of the world. So because of that ability to really control our supply chain and look after the logistics on the ground, it isn't difficult for us to get into that custom trip space a little bit more aggressively than perhaps we would have been in it before, where we were so focused on bringing strangers together. We'll have to be a little bit less focused on that. So I think that speaks to how we really, I think, will see ourselves adapting the rest of this year into the next. Our core product has definitely not gone away, and we are still seeing a lot of bookings for our regular global trips, particularly into the second half of 2021. I think, the difficult thing is obviously we don't really know when the majority of the world's borders are going to open. Therefore, it may be that people are booking into then and will have to rebook. And therefore, it's on us to say, how can we still be creating that positive brand sentiment? How can we still be engaging our customers and everyone in our supply chain? And actually, we have on some level kind of done that little bit of a pivot to virtual as well, in that our sister company does day tours. So our sister company is called Urban Adventures, and not so different from Walks, but I guess a bit less focused on walks, and it's usually more kind of half-day trips, but same sort of local-led, culturally immersive experiences all over the world. And we've also offered virtual trips in that space, but more focused on maybe a yoga class with our leaders in India, or a dumpling making class with our leaders in Poland. So there's varied things on offer, and we are increasing our offerings there. But as everyone said, the aim is to keep people in the travel industry in work and to keep travelers engaged, and it's an ever-evolving process to do that, really.
Right. One thing I noticed pre-pandemic, and that I feel like the pandemic will, just make, I'm blanking on the word, make it more of a catalyst, is a focus on sustainability and the environment and the impact we travelers have on the places we go, as well as a focus more on outdoor activities. I think especially in light of people being, locked down and inside for so long, there's a renewed appreciation for people just getting outdoors. And so as you see people looking into the future, later this year, early next year, do you see, both of you, do you see customer sentiment shifting to what is the environmental community impact of this trip, as well as, you know, I don't want to really be indoors, I'd rather do something outdoors? Start with Bex this time.
Yeah, I mean,
We'll
Matt,
go
like,
on and off.
okay, love it, love it. 100%, I would say bang on, really, with both things that you said. And I think a lot of it really comes back to the sentiment that a lot of travelers now have, that travel probably used to be seen as more of a right and has now been shifted to really more of a privilege. And I think, you know, we all realize how lucky we were prior to the pandemic to be able to jump on a plane spontaneously, not overthink, not worry about who we were going to come into contact with. And of course, that has all changed, and that changes consumer behavior probably for the long term. To me, I think the most encouraging trend in the industry, and this is only still in its very initial phases, is that I've actually begun to see a move from talking about sustainability to talking about regeneration. And there was a really interesting New York Times article about this that, you know, I should definitely share in the comments. But basically, the concept of sustainability being that you're trying to leave as little a footprint as possible, and that you're minimizing your environmental kind of negative impact. Whereas the focus on regenerative travel is more like, wait, is like leaving a small footprint the best that we can do? Should we not be trying to leave a positive impression? And can we not use travel as a force for good, as an industry that has 1 in 10 jobs worldwide? And so really a focus not on just minimizing the bad and the carbon and the consumerism and the waste, but a focus on, you know, how can we channel our tourism dollars into something positive? How can we improve local livelihoods? How can we support local communities in a positive way? So I genuinely do think that a lot of people are asking themselves the questions as to, you know, how can they be a better traveler? But I don't think they're happening in a silo. I think they've also happened in conjunction with the Black Lives Matter movement and the calls for more diversity and inclusion in the industry. And so to me, you know, yes, there has been a big focus on the environment, but in a nice way, it's been a bit more like, right, whoa, you know, travel is not a right, it's a privilege. If and when I am able to travel internationally again, how can I channel my tourism dollars, and how can I work to make the industry better for everyone, not just have a fun experience? So I think, you know, people have really been left with their thoughts the last 6 months and have become more introspective as an industry and as just humans. So I've really loved seeing that change. And then, yeah, you know, I'm not going to natter on about the other thing, like 100%, we've seen a massive increase in demand for our cycling trips in particular. Hiking trips have always been pretty big for us, but, you know, whereas before one of our top trips was the 7-day Inca Trail Express, and we've had, you know, we do a lot of trips in Kilimanjaro, you know, very much now, of course, we're focusing on the Unpack Once retreat model that is closer to home and offers a ton of walking, cycling, outdoorsy experiences. And, you know, you're completely right. We all know from experience that people are more comfortable outdoors.
Right. So, and Stephen, yourself?
Yeah, so I mean,
similar things.
Absolutely. I mean, I think there's been kind of a movement for quite some time for people to, you know, sort of shift their travel style to be more, you know, kind of visiting more locals, trying to, you know, do things that are not necessarily in large groups. I think the small group trend, which really was just beginning when we started our company. So, you know, I think the group size is going smaller, people kind of looking for more ways to get away from crowds and off the beaten path, and patronize you know, real like makers and people who are you know, culturally relevant to their communities, and you know, the hyper local approach. I think all of that's the development in the last few years, and it's going to continue For Walk's sake, we started as a small group walking tour company looking to get people away from crowds and find, special winemakers or, artisans that we could patronize on the tours and really show people more than sort of the standard cookie cutter type of experiences that were out there, large groups, umbrella led kind of programs that were out, when we started the business. But so we've definitely seen more momentum there. Definitely tried to make more of an effort on kind of reducing our impact. Again, as a walking tour operator in general, that's less of the issue for us. Our issue is more, how can we create an experience and market an experience that we can stand behind as being something that is different, that gets people to get more immersed or meeting real locals. And so that's been our kind of last few years. A lot of development has gone into that. Getting people on trains. We've done a lot more train work in the last 3 years, which is very expensive and challenging. And the customers aren't necessarily, when they try to compare between a vehicle, a charter bus cost versus a train, the train's going to cost more, but you can also include more. You can spend more time in places than if you're driving. So these types of things, I think people are more and more making the right choice to take something, because it can be a win-win, right? You can have more time in the destination. A great example is like Mont Saint-Michel, outside of outside of Paris, the beautiful kind of castle-looking island, and people who were taking the tours before would get like 2-3 hours there and spend 4 hours on a charter bus on the way there and back. So you can do a high-speed train, does cost a bit more, but you get 6 hours there. So you can kind of double the amount of time that you get by taking the train. So these types of things, I think, are sort of the positive momentum that we're seeing in our world, and really just partnering with the right people on the ground to make sure that people are visiting, authentic places and not places that are set up, truly for tourists. A place like Venice is a good example like that, right? Where almost everything is touristy. But if you work and really dig deep and kind of go one layer further, you can find incredible vendors there that are doing really special, unique things, and we like to include that on our tours.
So before we get into everyone's questions, and I want to make sure we have a chance to answer everyone's questions as we approach the hour, looking into our magic crystal ball, which, I mean, doesn't seem to work, because every time we look in, COVID changes it. But moving forward, where do you see, tours going? Do you think you'll see a lot of, consolidation in the tour industry? Do you think consumers are going to want tours because as Bex, you brought up, strangers, right? And, every stranger might be carrying COVID, and I think people are a lot weary of that. So where do you think the tour industry is going to sort of pivot in the future, and as the world maybe opens up, starting in the spring or whatever? Start with Stephen.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So I mean, first
you
of all,
rotate.
Yeah, that's good. So safety and hygiene and kind of I think protocols on the ground are really important. That was another thing that we didn't cover too much of, and I'm sure people have questions about. But training and social distancing, we've done webinars and with experts that help train our guides to have the best practices on the ground. Obviously, contrary to maybe some opinions, I think that testing and tracing as much as is going to be critical for having people feel comfortable on tours, so that that just like if you're getting on a plane, that you have a high level of faith that there are, it's unlikely to be contracting this virus on, your tour, on your train, on your flight, because they have a low level of exposure there, and you have a high level of testing. But I think that's sort of the main, future, at least for now, until there are vaccines and other treatments, that we really need to make sure people are well trained on how to follow the rules, that everybody wear masks, everybody keeps their distance. And if you keep the tours small, which we were already doing anyway, then that works well as having the private options like Bex was saying. So.
Bex?
Yeah, we're very aligned. I think that's completely accurate, that smaller group sizes and really more thoughtful, kind of slower options are gonna probably proliferate in a way that I think is really good for both COVID's safety, but also the environment and also all of the kind of ethical concerns of travel. So yeah, to very quickly touch on safety, we've done a lot of work as well behind the scenes. We've worked with the WTTC, the World Travel and Tourism Council, to develop safe travels protocols, which has all of these updated hygiene standards and, you know, a lot of behind the scenes training for leaders, so that if and when, and in some cases we already have had actually in-person trips depart in the last few months in a select few places like the UK and Greece, that people do feel comfortable, everyone in the supply chain, you know, and from leaders to travelers. So safety is a concern that isn't going away, and nor should it. But I think, you know, more long term, it really will be those few things that we've already discussed that will continue to be the trends. I think tours will really continue to focus on nature and making the most out of your environment, and in a very kind of human powered manner, like where can you get without transport, on your two legs, on your bike. And I think we are seeing with our retreat model, which we hadn't really done before, of, you know, really unpacking once and taking it slow and really getting to grips with just one particular destination, whether it's a small island or, you know, like somewhere rural, that is definitely going to continue to be a demand for it, just by virtue of the fact that you're in contact with less people, you feel safer, and you're really then ushering in that kind of slow travel that I do think we'll just see more of in general, because, you know, the industry develops and people, I think, will be less in a hurry to frantically kind of tick a list of their bucket list places, and probably, you know, plan things more thoughtfully and travel more thoughtfully. So same things we've all said, really hard to know, but I think there is a lot of positives if you look for them.
Yeah. I think should the world open up again, whenever it does, there's going to be a lot of pent up demand. And there's a lot of bloggers and such that run tours, and they've said they've seen like people just booking left and right for them. And I think the travel 2021, people talk about the year of travel because there's just pent up demand. Are you seeing that? Like, do you see, you know, in that consumer sentiment, like people are just like they're lining up to the gate, you know, ready to like get out the door again?
I mean, we definitely do, particularly on our social media. People are desperate to reminisce about trips. People are desperate to book trips. And I said it's really been the second half of 2021 that we've seen the vast majority of bookings for our kind of more regular trips into. I think the biggest trend that we've seen is people's almost bucket list nature trips. And by that, I mean particularly Antarctica and the Galapagos. We've seen a lot of demand for, and I think it's really the mixture of nature, but also people thinking, oh, I'd always really wanted to go to this destination. It was very much top of my list. I was gonna wait until I was 50 or I was retired, but very much, you know, it's become more of a priority on my bucket list, because life is short and we don't know what's going to happen with the world. You know, I'm going to really expedite the process of that. So some of those bucket list nature trips, we've seen a lot of demand for, but, you know, we'll see when people can actually get to them, whether it is 2021 or even 2022, to be completely, you know, honest here. That's really what we're saying.
Cool. I want to open it up to questions.
Okay.
Great. We have
I've seen a lot of questions. Erica is going to moderate all the questions.
Right.
She writes them down and keeps track while I talk.
Good team.
All right. So
teamwork makes the dream work.
Exactly. I am noticing that we have a few small tour operators on this call. I'm gonna guess that people are running between 2 to 8 tours a year that are asking questions. So I think that they're looking to you guys, and you could correct me if I'm wrong in the chat, but like looking to you guys for some guidance. I know Dana is asking, when will you know if it's safe to have tours again? Is there a certain infection level or an X amount of days without infection or a vaccine? Like, when do you feel like your companies will feel like, all right, we can do this full on? Either of you.
Stephen?
I'll go.
Go for it,
Yeah,
Stephen.
I can't remember whose turn it is. Yeah, so we've actually been
No
running
rules.
tours in some of our cities for months now. So since it all depended on what those cities were, how the status was, what was considered safe in those cities at that time, and who the travelers are, right? Obviously, as I said, majority of our customers were Americans. Now the majority of our customers are domestic Europeans during this time, and people from places like Germany and the UK, and traveling to largely to Italy, as Italy's kind of first wave was, obviously huge, but then they got it under great control and they had a really decent summer there. And a lot of the European countries that were able to travel did. So for us, we've been running tours, as I said, with the training in place and using the guidelines of those cities and the attractions we visit, mostly in Rome and Venice, and a little bit in Paris. And really that's all we've been doing. How do we know when the right time to open is? I mean, I think if any operator is going to go by whatever the regional guidance is, there's not a magic number per se. It's if that place has been deemed safe to travel to or from, and the attractions or the the vehicle policies or whatever it is, there are policies for pretty much every level of travel, and as long as you follow those guidelines, and ideally do more than what those guidelines ask, which is what I think, at least in our case, that we've been doing. So really that's the goal, and I agree that I think it's going to be second half of 2021 till 2022 to really see more of that come back in a way that looks like what maybe a decade ago of travel looked like. I think we're going to be set back, but at least there will be this kind of momentum that builds over the next few years. But yeah, that's how I feel about it.
Anything to add, Bex?
Yeah, no, nothing's too significant. 100%, every tour operator could and is really following the international guidelines, the national guidelines, anything that is mandated. I completely agree. We all could and should be doing things beyond that, and that really is the training behind the scenes, as well as increased protocols. And for us, we've also, run a few trips in a few destinations that we've deemed safe, and there is that demand there in rural parts of the UK, in lesser known parts of Greece. And it's a case of, being very honest with the small groups, getting people to complete health and safety questionnaires at the beginning of the trip, encouraging the mask wearing, and, really making it very clear that we abide by all of the guidelines for a reason, and we expect everyone on our trips to be doing the same, because health and safety first for both our travelers, our guides, and the communities that we're lucky enough to be able to visit. So
Great.
Same.
Then we have Talik, and she's asking, what insurance do you recommend for people taking tours post-COVID that would protect them, the traveler, and also she runs tours, so what insurance would you recommend for the tour company? Do you have any ideas?
I'm gonna have to be honest and say that it changes so regularly, and it completely depends on where you're based and what you want to do, that it's hard to give any kind of blanket solutions. But I know that a decent amount of airlines and some providers, maybe Nomads or some of the other big ones, have begun to offer, insurance that covers COVID, and we're going to see more of that. But I don't know that I would feel comfortable commenting on something too specific beyond that.
Matt?
Right. Yeah. I kind of agree with that. I mean, I think that, should people be getting travel insurance? Absolutely. Covering COVID is sort of an ambiguous topic. I mean, I personally went on a trip recently, you know, on my first real kind of vacation, so to speak, since the pandemic. And, you know, we did buy travel insurance. We looked into it. We've had a long-standing relationship with our company and Travel Guard, which is, you know, a pretty large, well-known travel insurance company. You know, it really depends on what you're trying to cover. If you're talking about covering things for your operation, that's a very different kind of coverage. Whereas if you're trying to encourage your travelers to get personal travel insurance, which I know Matt is a big fan of, and I am as well. We always try to book it and encourage our guests to get it as well. But yeah, so whether you're using well, Nomads or Allianz or Travel Guard, those are all great. And then you definitely, as a tour operator, if for the tour operators out there, you want to have some sort of umbrella liability insurance. Now, do they have COVID policies? I haven't yet seen adaptations of our existing policies that include that kind of a rider. I'm sure they're coming. I'm sure the insurance industry is working on that. But you know, just stay in touch with your broker, and I'm sure your policy renewal will have a whole bunch of documents for you to review on that. But definitely travel insurance, especially because of the cancellation stuff. Especially if you're out of pocket and you contract it before you go, that is covered if you have to cancel. So I mean, that's the no-brainer. Definitely book it.
Yeah, 100%. We also have a question from Susan, who's asking, have either of you changed your refund terms to make customers feel more comfortable booking earlier?
Good question. And yeah, very quickly, we've essentially changed all of our policies. I think anyone in the travel industry has to be incredibly agile right now. And if you can't react quickly to the changes, then it puts you in a much more vulnerable situation. So, I mean, we've completely changed our flexible booking policies, and we're very, very transparent about them. Like, I mean, for Intrepids, it's intrepidtravel.com/flexible bookings, and so it's like very, very clear, like you can change within a certain amount of time. And before, you know, would you be able to just really quickly go from one trip to another in a short amount of time? You know, potentially not. And now a little bit the world is your oyster, and in a way it's it's something to bear in mind, because the travel industry is hurting, and there's a reason why travel companies are having to really enact that. So you know, I will say in the kind of the mentality of let's ensure that this precious industry kind of is here for us when international travel returns. If people, you know, as opposed to canceling, can try and prioritize rebooking, and, you know, can really try and ensure that we don't see too many travel companies go out of business, and that we have a wealth of, you know, incredible companies to choose from. Like, I think it's in all of our best interests to see a healthy travel industry. So the travel companies, you know, are trying to make it work, trying to enact policies. We certainly have done, and hopefully consumers can feel encouraged by that and support the industry that we know and love.
Great. And are you finding that customers are even more price sensitive than before, or you find they're looser with their spending?
Just quickly, and then I'll let Stephen kind of, you know, say his thoughts. I would say they're not necessarily more price sensitive, but they're overall more cautious and will ask, you know, a considerable amount more questions before considering booking something, which is 100% fair enough. I would say there's obviously that, you know, subsection of society who unfortunately have lost their jobs and their livelihoods and aren't in the position to travel internationally, but those who are in the position, I would say they've had less money, you know, they've less things to spend their money on because they're not going out as much. And actually, therefore, you are seeing people saving up for that big bucket list trip and doing it sooner than they ordinarily would have done for things like the Antarctic and Galapagos in particular, from our perspective.
Yeah. I mean, for us, it's kind of a totally different animal, right? Because you know, while the Intrepid trips might be very high ticket value, you know, things you book very far in advance, you know, activities like a tour of the Colosseum or the Louvre is a very different type of really everything. So, well, yes, I think price sensitivity is fair, and airlines and hotels certainly will do a lot to attract people to come to a destination. You know, if anything, I think the attractions and the guides are going to have to increase costs. And so I don't feel like there is, I mean, if you go all the way to Rome, you want to see the Vatican or the Colosseum or, you know, incredible museums and all over the city, these places are going to increase their ticket prices. There's no question they're going to do that. So the traveler can be price sensitive about getting to the destination, but I think that in the reality of if you want to visit places, they're going to have to be coming back from and adjusting from the impact of COVID as well, and fair that they should. I mean, a lot of people are losing their livelihoods, and museums themselves are closing down potentially for good across the world. So I think that is the reality that we'll see in the next few years is the cost of some of the things that you do when you get to a destination will increase. But but that might be offset by subsidizing by governments for encouraging travel, as many countries have done for years, as well as airlines trying to get people back feeling comfortable. You've already seen this, right, with removing change fees from the major carriers. So that's where I think it's going to happen. But there is a bit of a conflict here between price sensitivity versus demand for private, right? If you want to take private tours, that's which we are seeing more interest in. That is a more costly approach. So there are sort of two shifting developments happening, and I think over the next few months, especially going into next year, we'll see how it all shakes out.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll take one more question.
Yeah, I'm going to do one from Camillo, who's asking, how do you see the need for mindful or sustainable or regenerative travel balancing with the pent-up demand for international travel? What tips would you encourage us travelers to follow here?
Right. Travel local and domestic, right? Sorry, I'm trying to go back to the back and forth, but stay. I mean, as much as it is meaningful for us to have people traveling internationally, obviously we can't have 2021 be everybody in the world wants to go back to all the places that are on the top 10 list. I mean, that's not going to work either, and certainly won't be able to follow all the policies that have been put in place if that happens. So I think the best thing is to balance, really patronize your local area, do day trips. I've seen a lot of road tripping is kind of trending for travelers, and I think that's the way to go. To a lot of countries are doing promotions now where you can travel domestically and save. Some are doing tax incentives and so forth. I think that's the right approach. And absolutely, go back and start planning those big trips again too. But I think it's really up to the traveler to be more conscious about choosing where they go, spreading it around a bit more. I mean, the concentration of travelers in places like Rome and Paris and London is so high, whereas all of those countries have incredible destinations even within an hour's drive of those cities. So it's really about kind of including more on those trips when you do plan for the future.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think Stephen, really hit the nail on the head there. Think local, and when you think international, think how you can get away from the over-touristed hubs, because as we've said, even in countries and cities, when there's places like Barcelona and Rome and Venice that do have that reputation, you can get off the beaten path if you put the effort in as a traveler. And in terms of what that means to put the effort in, opt for a travel company that does think locals first, that does try and get you off the beaten path, or do that additional research, because it's certainly easy to do. Spread the tourism dollars, focus on destinations and countries where you feel like your money is perhaps not going to a chain, or isn't going to the CEO of Marriott or Hilton, let's say, and focusing on locally owned accommodation, local transport is going to benefit the local economies far more. And so at Intrepid, certainly, we always stay in locally owned accommodation. We focus on local transport. We support local businesses, and it is about doing the research essentially, and happy to discuss this more anytime, because very much clearly a passion of all of ours, and we all have responsibility as travelers as well as travel industry people to be making the industry more equitable for every person in it, really.
Exactly.
100%.
And I frame that of just like supporting the industry. Like, we are all obsessed with this travel industry. We don't want to see it go down in flames and stay down. So we want to really concentrate on building it back up. That's awesome. Well,
Yes.
Matt.
Well, I will chime in for a quick second before we end
Please.
on the hour. Thank you so much for Stephen and Rebecca to be here. Erica dropped their company links in the chat. Intrepidtravel.com. We use them as our preferred small tour operator at Nomadic Matt. I've been on many, many of their tours. I was going to do another tour this year, but
I know. Peru or Bhutan next year.
Next year. You knocked that off my bucket list. Speaking of bucket list destinations,
I know.
Stephen from Take Walks, takewalks.com. They now run virtual walking tours all over the place, so you can learn from the comfort and safety of your own home. And thank you again for coming. We do lots and lots of these. And as Erica mentioned at the beginning, we record all these and they are available to our lovely patrons who join our Patreon, which gets you exclusive blog posts, all these recordings, a private Facebook group, Q&As with me and the team, t-shirts, copies of my books, tickets to TravelCon, lots and lots of perks as being a member and helping to support us through these crazy, crazy times. And just, gives us a chance to connect more with our members, as well as you can just do a one-time PayPal donation to Matt at nomadicmatt.com, or these awesome QR codes she made where you can just, help us keep these events going. Yeah, but either way, we'll keep doing that, and thank you all for coming. We have a whole bunch more next week. As you can see, I'll let Erica.
Lola.
Yeah, we have some really great ones. Tonight is a California travel happy hour, which is awesome. And it's different than these. You get to actually talk and share your stories and connect with people around you. Next week on September 30th, we have Stephen coming back for his part 3 of how to move to France, because part 1 and 2 were overflowing with questions. So he is amazing, and please show up to that if you want to know anything. This is the last one he's doing. And then also next Thursday, Matt will be interviewing Lola, who is an insane travel photographer, the genius behind Matt's headshot, and also so many photos in Nat Geo that are much more famous than Matt's headshot, sorry. But we're very excited to have her. She's incredible. And then we also have one of our community members, Emma, who is living in Singapore, who's going to tell us all about Singapore on the 6th. It's going to be amazing what to do, what to expect, what things to see off the beaten path, so that as you're planning your travel, because we definitely saw that people are into planning travel during this time, you can plan it more thoughtfully. And then we have a very similar one from Cassandra Santoro of Travel Italian Style, who's going to be presenting on Italy on October 7th. So these are all available at thenomadicnetwork.com/events. They're all free, and we would love for you to come share them with your friends. We love to put these on, and the more the merrier. The last thing I'll say is just thank you for being a part of our travel community. It's so great to have you. It's also so great to have you, Bex and Stephen and Matt and all the community members that showed up today. Honestly, these are the light of my week.
Aww.
And I love having more and more different talks and different experts coming on to share their expertise. We had a lot of comments about how successful and how useful all these tips were. So thank you so much for being here, and I will see you guys next time.
Thank you so much for building this amazing community and having so many amazing events for us all. Amazing work by the team.
Well,
Thank you, everyone. We'll see you in the next talk.
Bye all.
Bye.
Thank you.